above the datura plant. The datura plant is mostly a night bloomer, even though we see it in the morning. It also has colors that appeal more to moths than to bees because of the spectrum that the different insects see. So in that, the datura plant is already in a niche. Then it is also morphologically very deep-throated. So that will exclude a number of butterflies, for example, with the shorter proboscis. The proboscis of these moths is actually, I've measured it a couple of times, up to 6 inches long. The plants are usually about 4 or 5 inches long. So the moths could just stay where they are in this picture or in this picture, and it's something that hawk moths do a lot, they hover, but that would not pollinate the plant. The nectar of these plants is spiked. It has the alkaloids that make the plant poisonous and hallucinogenic to humans and probably other mammals. But for the moths, it's a mild, it slows them down and it's pleasant to them. So it's a drug. So they stay longer than they usually would if they were just harvesting nectar, and they crawl in much more than they need to just get the nectar. They also flap their wings within the plant. So they really, see this one, oh, where's the pointer? This one has already passed the stigma here, and there are the anthers, but it's still going in deeper, and it's really getting pollen all over himself. And he likes it so much, that's why it's called addiction, that he will stay with the datura plant. He will not go to any other plant as long as the datura is blooming. So that is really what the plant needs, cross-pollination within its own species. It pays for it a little bit because the moths will also lay their eggs, and they're voracious eaters. The caterpillar will eat big parts of the plant. But by then, the life cycle of the datura plant is nearly over anyway, because it only lives after the rainy season as long as there's water. Now, we often see a lot of insects come together to mate, and they seem to be drawn to certain plants. This Achmeodera species, this is Achmeodera gibula, another crested, is always on the same yellow astracea, and there are similar astraceas in the same area, and they will have a different species of Achmeodera on it. I don't really know why. But, oh, and when beetles come together in big groups for mating, there's often pheromones involved. These lycids, for example, you can see them by the hundreds, sometimes in one mesquite tree or in one mimosa, but I've also seen on an oak. So they're not really there for the plant that much. They attract each other. When the first ones are mating, the others are drawn in by pheromones. Now, plants make use of that. Here's an orchid. It supposedly grows, not this species, but this genus offers all over the world, but I haven't seen them here in Arizona yet. I have seen them in Italy and in Greece a lot. The flower looks very much like a bumblebee. Yeah, you have the head here, the legs, even the shiny part of folded wings, and the big furry body. And there are other species that look like bees, and some look like spiders. They all attract different insects, and they have the pheromones for it. They use the sexual pheromones of the insect to attract one. Here we have a longhorned bee, and it's a male, as you can see by those very long antennae. And he will land and try to copulate with the flower, and the pollen is in little packages here, and it will be glued to the head of the bee. And he will fly to the next plant and try this whole thing again, because this doesn't just look like a bumblebee, it looks like a super bumblebee. It exaggerates all the treats, the the sexiness of the bubbly female. So that's the deception towards the males. Of course, they're usually dumber, but the females go for it too. Like in this case, this is a Staphylia, and it is also not native here, but I have it in my backyard. Grows quite well. And every October it makes these huge star-shaped flowers. To me, they don't smell much, but they produce the same amines, which are chemicals that rotting flesh releases. So what it attracts are flesh flies. Here's a sarcophaga, and here's a whole bunch of bottle flies already in the heart. See, even the colors and this rippling and the little hairs on the side, that all looks like ripped skin, maybe of a dead horse or whatever. So the flies come, they're the females, they try to lay eggs here, or they do lay eggs, but when the larvae hatch, they starve. There's nothing to eat for them. But the flower has been pollinated in the process. So in this case, only the flower has advantages from it. In other cases, the flowers get to host the offspring of the insects, and that may or may not be good for the flower. We have the maggot fly here that lays its eggs on the flower of the sunflower, but the larvae will develop in the developing seeds. But the fly may also contribute to the fertilization of the flower. Here is another one of these little day-active noctuids, also a pollinator, but it will lay eggs on the plant. In this case, it's a desert chicory, and when the seeds of the plant are starting to fly around, they have these little parachutes. Then some of them will be eaten by the caterpillars of the Shinia. Here is a little weevil, and he lives on brittlebush. So every year in Madera Canyon, you can see during brittlebush time these little guys walking around, chewing on the plant, laying their eggs, and the larvae will develop again when the brittlebush seeds develop. Here's an example of it's called a weevil, but it's really a leaf beetle. They lay their eggs on leguminous plants. So you find little holes in the seed pods of mesquite and palo verde, and that's usually where their larvae have emerged. From his position there and his behavior, I would assume he can pollinate it too, but mainly he's there to lay his eggs. The greater milkweed bug here is not considered a pollinator, and he is not always on the flower. He crawls around on the whole plant. He is sucking juices from the plant tissues, and so do his nymphs. So I guess in this case it's all for the bug. Here is the queen caterpillar. The queen and monarch butterflies do pollinate the flowers, but also their larvae will utilize the big part of the plant later. But when Fred was talking about the butterflies, it occurred all the time that their host plants were specific. So all these insects here will always go to the same host plant. They fly around between several of them, so they are at that point faithful and they can cross-pollinate. Whereas butterflies that have only nectar on their mind, they will just flitter from plant to plant, and they may not be good cross-pollinators. So offering the butterfly food that will tie them to the plant may again be a good strategy here. This kind of dependency between host plant and pollinator and larval food can go very much further. This is the fig. This fig comes from the